Rain stood at the edge of the royal garden, his eyes scanning the tall, silver trees that shimmered under the pale sun of Velmara. The air was cool and filled with the sound of strange birds. He had only been on this alien world for 3 weeks, but already it felt like everything had changed. He was a soldier from Earth. He had fought in the last battle between humans and Velmari forces, but now that war was over, peace had come after years of fighting. As part of the new alliance, Earth had sent military advisors to help build trust. Rain was one of them, and now he was here, inside the heart of the Velmari palace, watching over their queen. The Velmari were tall and graceful. Their skin had a soft shimmer, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Most of them moved with calm pride, and they spoke in a formal, musical tone. Rain had learned their language, but he still felt like an outsider. Every hallway he walked down grew silent. Every room he entered held eyes that watched him carefully. Still, he kept his posture strong and his mind sharp. He had not come here to beg for respect. He believed it would be earned, not asked for. Queen Erin was younger than Rain expected. She had taken the throne after her father died in the last year of the war. She did not speak much during meetings, but when she did, her words carried weight. Rain noticed her strength the first day he met her. She looked small among her royal advisors, but her gaze was steady. She did not look at him like he was a threat. She looked at him like she was deciding whether he was worth her time. That afternoon, a ceremony was held in the Grand Hall. Velmari nobles filled the space, dressed in flowing robes, their faces painted with light colors. Rain stood near the back, wearing a plain black uniform. He watched without speaking, trying to understand the rituals. The queen stepped forward to speak, but before she could finish her words, a sharp movement caught Rain's eye. From above, a figure dropped down from the high ceiling. The figure moved fast, its blade aimed at the queen. The guards reacted, but not fast enough. Rain had already moved. He pushed through the line of nobles and leapt onto the platform. The assassin turned, surprised to see a human rushing toward him. Rain didn't slow down. He struck low, knocking the weapon from the attacker's hand. They rolled across the floor, and in a few seconds, the attacker was on the ground, pinned by Rain's arm across his throat. Guards finally reached them and pulled the would-be killer away. Rain stood up slowly, his chest rising and falling. With every breath, the queen was safe. The hall was silent. Later, the queen sent for him. He stood before her in a quiet chamber lined with glowing crystals. She thanked him with a calm voice and asked him one question. "Why did you act?" Rain answered honestly, "Because I saw the danger. I was trained to protect." It didn't matter who it was. The queen studied him for a long moment, then nodded. She said nothing more, only told him to return the next day. That was when everything changed. The next morning, Velmari nobles began whispering. Some praised his actions. Others claimed it was a trick, that maybe humans had planned the attack. Rain felt the change in the air. He was no longer just an outsider. He was now part of something larger, whether he liked it or not. But not everyone was impressed. Commander Dravok, the leader of the Royal Guard, made his feelings clear. Dravok was tall even by Velmari's standards, with dark skin that shimmered like metal under sunlight. He had led the Guard for 20 years and had fought in every major battle of the war. He was a legend among his people. Dravok did not speak to Rain for 3 days. Then, during a training session with the palace guards, he stepped into the ring and invited Rain to spar. The invitation sounded polite, but everyone could feel the challenge behind it. Rain accepted. They fought with practice. Blades, but the speed and strength of the strikes were real. Dravok moved with perfect form, but Rain had fought in worse conditions. He kept his defense tight and pushed back when he saw an opening. The match ended in a draw, but the message was clear. Rain would not back down. That evening, Rain walked through one of the quiet halls near the queen's chamber. He found Dravok waiting there, arms crossed. "You should leave this palace," the commander said. Rain looked him in the eye. "Is that an order?" "It is advice," Dravok replied. "You saved the queen." "Yes, but that does not make you one of us." "I didn't ask to be one of you," Rain said. "But I'm not walking away." Dravik stepped closer. His voice lowered. "You are being watched. The court does not trust you, and neither do I." Rain did not reply. He didn't need to. His silence said enough. Later that night, a formal message was delivered to Rain's quarters. It was a sealed document with the royal symbol. He opened it carefully. Inside was a duel challenge. Not a fight of hate, but a test of honor. Commander Dravik had challenged Rain to a traditional Velmari duel. It would be without weapons. No blood was to be drawn. The purpose was to prove worth, not destroy. Rain folded the message and placed it on the table. He stood still for a long moment. Then he whispered one word to himself: accepted. The sun rose gently over the palace of Velmara, casting long shadows across the stone walls. Rain stood near the training yard, watching the early morning drills. Velmari guards moved in smooth patterns, their blades slicing through the air. With silent precision, Rain was not training today. His mind was busy with thoughts of the duel. The challenge from Commander Dravik was not just a fight, it was a message to the whole court. If Rain lost, humans would be seen as weak. If he won, things would change. Some might respect him, but others would fear him even more. The duel had been set for 3 days from now. Word had spread quickly through the palace. Nobles whispered. Behind long sleeves, some guards nodded at Rain with quiet respect. Others avoided looking at him. That afternoon, Rain walked through the inner halls of the palace. The walls here were lined with glowing crystal tiles, each one carved with stories of Velmari history. He passed a group of noble scholars. They paused in their talk and watched him go by. He could hear parts of their conversation after he passed. Is he foolish or brave? He is only human. This will not end well. Rain kept walking. He had heard worse before. Later, he was called to the queen's private garden. The garden was quiet, filled with tall blue plants that moved slowly in the wind. Queen Arian stood beside a pool of clear water, her long robe trailing on the stone path. "You accepted the challenge," she said without turning. Rain stepped forward. "Yes, I could not ignore it." She looked at him now, her eyes calm but serious. "Do you understand what this means for you and for your people?" "I do," he answered. "I won't run from it." Arian studied him for a moment. "Most men would have refused. That would not be shameful. Velmari duels are not meant for outsiders." Rain shook his head. "If I refused, no one here would take humans seriously again. I'm not fighting just for myself." The queen nodded slowly. She seemed to understand. Then she spoke again, her voice softer. "Dravik is not just a soldier. He carries the weight of our traditions. He believes in old ways. He lost family during the war with Earth. His heart still carries pain." Rain's voice lowered. "I didn't come here to replace him. I just want to serve with honor." She looked at him one last time. "Then prepare well. The court will be watching." Rain bowed and left the garden. As he walked back toward his room, he passed through the main corridor where statues of past kings and queens stood tall. He paused. At one figure carved in white stone, it was the queen's father, the last ruler before her, a warrior, a leader. He had died in battle during the last major strike between Earth and Velmara. Rain wondered if the queen saw some piece of her father in him, or if she only saw a soldier trying to survive in a court full of politics. Over the next 2 days, Rain trained in silence. He did not use weapons. The duel would be hand to hand, a match of balance, speed, and control. He practiced breathing, timing, and movement. He focused on learning the rhythms of Velmari fighting styles, blending them with what he already knew. He did not sleep much, but he did not feel tired. His mind stayed sharp. At night, he watched the stars from the palace roof. Velmara had 2 moons, and both were full now. Their silver light touched everything below. He thought of Earth, of the cities he once protected, of the soldiers he served beside. He remembered their faces, their courage. He was here now, but he carried their spirit with him. On the final day, Rain was called to a meeting with one of the queen's advisors. The man was named Varen, a pale Velmari with thin hands and sharp eyes. Varen did not smile. "You know what losing this duel means," Varen said. Rain nodded. "Yes, I know. Some in the court believe you were sent here to take power slowly. They think Earth wants to control our future. Rain looked at him calmly. That is not why I came. I came to build peace. Varen leaned forward slightly. Then you must prove it, not just with words, but with your actions. Rain stood up. That's what I plan to do. The advisor said nothing more. Later, Rain stood in front of a mirror in his room. He wore a plain outfit made of dark fabric, light enough for movement but respectful for the duel. He stared at his reflection. He looked calm, strong, but deep inside, he could feel the pressure building. This was more than a fight. It was a symbol. The doors to his chamber opened. A young Velmari guard stepped in. It is time, he said quietly. Rain followed him through the halls. As they walked, more guards joined them. No one spoke. The palace felt silent, like it was holding its breath. They reached the ceremonial arena at the center of the royal grounds. It was a round stone platform, open to the sky, surrounded by rows of steps. Nobles filled the seats, dressed in formal robes. The queen sat at the highest point, her eyes fixed on the arena floor. Dravik stood at the other end of the circle, tall and still. His dark armor had been replaced with a simple Velmari robe tied at the waist. He looked like a statue carved from shadow. Rain stepped forward. The court watched with cold eyes. No cheers, no sound. The queen stood. She raised her hand. Let this be a duel of honor, she said. No weapons, no hatred, only skill and truth. She sat down. Dravik walked forward and stopped at the center. Rain mirrored his step. They stood face to face. The commander spoke first. You still have time to step back, he said. Rain answered, steady and clear. I'm ready. The two men bowed. Then they stepped back to begin. The duel would begin at moonrise, and no one could predict how it would end. The arena grew quiet as the sky turned darker. Velmara's twin moons began to rise, casting silver light across the stone platform. A soft wind moved through the crowd, but no one made a sound. All eyes were on the two men standing in the center. Rain stood tall, his breathing calm. His eyes were fixed on Dravik. Across from him, the Velmari commander looked like a mountain carved from iron. His body was still, but there was power in his stance. Every inch of him showed experience, control, and pride. The queen gave a final signal from her seat above. The duel had begun. Dravik moved first. His strike came fast, sweeping low and aimed at Rain's legs. Rain stepped back just in time, twisting to the side. He did not strike back yet. He wanted to understand Dravik's rhythm. The second attack came from the left. Rain blocked it with his forearm and shifted his weight. Dravik's blows were strong, but they were also sharp, not wild. This was not a man trying to crush his opponent. This was a warrior testing the ground. Rain responded with a step-in and a light strike to the chest, enough to show he was not backing away. Dravik did not flinch. He nodded once, almost like a silent message. Then the pace changed. Their movements became faster, more fluid. They circled each other. Their feet never stopped. The duel turned into a dance of motion and force. Rain blocked, ducked, stepped in and out, striking only when the opening was clear. Dravik met every move with perfect balance. The crowd remained silent, but the tension was rising. This was not a simple match. It was something else, something more important. Rain had fought many battles before. He had faced machines, alien beasts, and soldiers trained to kill without thought. But this was different. Dravik did not fight to win quickly. He fought to measure his enemy, to understand him. That made the duel longer, harder, and more dangerous. Rain began to feel the weight in his arms. His breath grew heavier. He took a hit to his shoulder when he misjudged a strike. The pain was sharp, but he stayed on his feet. Dravik's eyes narrowed. He attacked again, aiming higher. Rain blocked and turned, using the force to push the commander back a step. That was the first time Dravik had to shift his footing. For a second, Rain saw surprise in the commander's face. They paused for a moment. Both men stood apart, catching their breath. Their clothes were soaked with sweat. Their hands were bruised, but neither had fallen. Dravik straightened and spoke for the first time since the duel started. You fight with focus, he said. Not anger, Rain answered, his voice steady. I was trained that way. Good, Dravik said. Then he stepped forward again. The next clash was harder. Their strikes echoed across the stone. Rain ducked under a sweeping arm and came up with a solid push to Dravik's chest. The commander stumbled but stayed upright. He replied with a spinning move that knocked Rain off balance. Rain rolled and came up fast. Facing him again, more than skill was being tested now. It was will, strength of mind, endurance. The moons continued to rise. Their light now covered the whole arena. The queen watched with a still face, but her eyes were focused. Nobles leaned forward, some holding their breath. Rain pushed himself forward, dodging a powerful blow and landing a clean strike to Dravik's side. The commander turned quickly and caught Rain's arm, pulling him into a hold. For a moment, it looked like Rain might go down, but he twisted his body, slipped free, and dropped low, striking Dravik's knee. Dravik stepped back, and both men returned to their ready stances. Their breathing was louder now. Their clothes were torn in places. Their faces showed the effort. Neither had asked for rest, neither had stepped away. Rain's mind was clear. He was tired, but focused. Every move had a purpose, every step mattered. He had to prove that humans were more than just fighters. He had to prove they could stand with honor, even on alien ground. Dravik's face showed something new now. Not pride, not anger. Something like respect. The final exchange began. Dravik attacked with speed, throwing to sharp strikes toward Rain's shoulder and chest. Rain blocked both. Then he saw a small shift in the commander's balance. A chance. Rain moved inside the strike. He twisted his hips and pushed with both hands, using Dravik's weight against him. The commander lost his footing. He fell backward onto the stone floor. Gasps filled the arena. Dravik landed hard. Rain stepped back, letting him rise. The commander looked up at him. His face was calm. There was no shame, only silence. Rain offered his hand. For a long second, Dravik did not move. Then he reached up and took the hand of the human. Rain helped him stand. The duel was over. The queen stood. Her voice echoed across the arena. Honor has been shown. Skill has been tested. Let the court remember this day. The crowd stood. Some clapped quietly. Some bowed their heads. Others said nothing. Rain turned and walked off the platform. His steps were heavy, but steady. He had not come here to win glory, but he had won something more important. He had earned respect. Dravik followed him a few steps behind. As they left the circle, he spoke again. You fight as a warrior should, with strength and control. Rain nodded. So do you? We are not finished, human, Dravik said. But for now, you have my respect. Rain did not smile, but inside, something settled. The battle was done, but the journey was far from over. The light from Vilmar's twin moons spread across the palace grounds. The duel between Rain and Dravik had ended, but the silence after it was heavier than before. The people had witnessed something they did not expect. A human had stood against the commander of the royal guard and did not fall. Rain returned to his room alone. His clothes were torn, and his arms were sore. He washed his face in the small basin and looked at himself in the mirror. A faint bruise was forming on his jaw, and there were red marks on his arms and chest. But he did not feel pain. What he felt was a calm stillness. The fight had not been about anger or victory. It had been about proof. He sat down near the window. From there, he could still see the moons above. Their light had shone on both him and Dravik during the duel. The Vilmari believed the twin moons were the eyes of the ancestors. If that was true, then tonight, those ancestors had watched a human earn their attention. The next morning, the palace was quieter than usual. Many nobles avoided speaking to Rain, but their stares had changed. They no longer looked at him as a stranger who didn't belong. Some now watched with a mix of curiosity and silent acceptance. Queen Arian called for him in the early afternoon. He entered her private study, where soft lights glowed from crystal lamps. She was seated at a long table with scrolls, maps, and messages spread before her. Her hands were folded, and her face was unreadable. You stood your ground, she said as he entered. Rain bowed slightly. I did what I had to. There are still voices in the court who question your place here, she said. But fewer than before. Rain remained quiet. I must ask again, she continued. Why? Did you accept that duel? Rain looked at her calmly, because I knew walking away would say more than losing ever could. She leaned back in her chair. You think like a soldier? I am a soldier, Rain said. But I also know peace doesn't survive if people don't stand up for it. Aaron gave a small nod. That answer will stay with me. Before he left, she spoke again. Dravik has not lost a duel in 15 years. You made him fall. Do you think that makes you stronger than him? Rain shook his head. I don't think strength is measured by victory. He taught me during that fight. He showed me who he really is. The queen seemed to consider his words. Then she turned her eyes back to her maps. You may go, she said softly. Rain walked out of the study feeling something he had not expected. It was not pride. It was understanding. The queen had been testing him from the beginning, not with weapons or words, but with silence. And now she was beginning to trust him. That evening, Rain went to the training yard again. This time, no one stopped him. Some guards greeted him with quiet nods. A few even asked questions about his movements and training style. He answered. Then with patience, later, Dravik entered the yard. He wore his training clothes, and his walk was steady. You are still standing, he said. So are you, Rain replied. Dravik moved to a nearby bench and sat. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he spoke, not like a commander, but like a man remembering the past. My brother died during the war with Earth, he said. He was only 20 years old. He believed in peace, even during battle. But he fell to human weapons. Rain listened, saying nothing. I hated your people for many years. Dravik continued, even when the war ended, that hatred stayed. When I saw you in the palace, standing close to the queen, giving advice, I felt that old fire rise again. Rain looked at him, and now Dravik's eyes were calm. Now I see something else. I see someone who fights with purpose, someone who is not here to take power, but to protect what matters. Rain nodded. I didn't come to replace anyone. No, Dravik said. But you may change things, and change is not always welcome. A long pause followed. There are whispers in the court, Dravik added. Some nobles are not pleased with your presence. The duel silenced some of them, but others may act in darker ways. Rain leaned forward. Do you think there will be more threats? Yes, Dravik said. But they may not come with open blades. Rain stood up. Then we need to watch the shadows together. Dravik looked at him for a moment. Then he gave a single nod. From that day, things began to shift. Rain and Dravik trained together often. They did not speak much during those sessions, but a quiet bond grew between them. The guards who once looked at Rain with doubt now watched him with respect. One night, while walking the outer halls, Rain spotted movement near the queen's private quarters. He followed the sound and found a servant hiding behind a pillar. The servant dropped a message scroll and fled. Rain picked up the scroll and opened it. It was written in a code he had learned during his first month on Velmara. After reading the lines, his expression darkened. The message spoke of a secret meeting, a plan to remove the queen from power and place someone else on the throne. It was signed only with a symbol, a circle with 3 lines through it. Rain took the scroll to Dravik the next morning. They met in a quiet corner of the training yard. There's a plot, Rain said. Someone wants the queen out of the way. Dravik read the scroll carefully. This symbol is old. It belongs to a group that believes the alliance with Earth is dangerous. We need to stop them, Rain said. Dravik nodded. We will. But we must act with care. If we move too soon, they will vanish. If we move too late, it may be her last day on the throne. Rain looked out at the palace walls. Then we move smart. The commander gave a small smile. You really are one of us now. Rain did not smile back. His eyes stayed focused. The duel had ended. But the real test was only beginning. The palace had grown quieter in the days after the discovery of the secret message. The tension was like a heavy cloud hanging over the halls. Rain and Dravik moved carefully, watching and listening for any signs of the conspirators. Their alliance had shifted the balance, but danger was still near. Rain found himself spending more time near Queen Arian. She trusted him, and he wanted to protect her. She was young, but she carried the weight of her people's hopes on her shoulders. When they met in her private chambers, she spoke softly, but her words held great meaning. "Do you believe we can stop this before it grows?" she asked. Rain nodded. "Yes, but we must act quickly and wisely." Arian looked away. For a moment, some in the court do not want peace. They believe strength comes from fear, not trust. Rain's voice was firm. "Then we will show them the true strength of unity." Outside, the palace buzzed with quiet whispers. Nobles moved in small groups, their eyes flicking toward the queen's chambers. Rain noticed the subtle glances and the half-smiles that spoke of secrets. The conspiracy was real. One afternoon, Rain and Dravik met in the training yard. The sun was low in the sky, and long shadows stretched across the ground. Dravik's face was serious. "We have a spy," he said. "Someone close to the queen is feeding information to the traitors." Rain frowned. "Who?" Dravik shook his head. "I don't know yet, but we will find out." They began watching more closely. Guards changed their patrol routes. Rain used his knowledge of human tactics to set quiet traps. They moved in silence, waiting for the right moment. Then, during a late evening gathering, Rain spotted a servant slipping away from the queen's audience chamber. The servant carried a small packet. Rain followed silently. The servant met a shadow near the palace wall. Rain could not hear their words, but the secret exchange was clear. When the servant left, Rain moved forward and found a hidden note. The note was short but clear. It spoke of plans to strike during the upcoming festival celebrating the moons. The conspirators would try to capture or kill Queen Arian then. Rain took the note to Dravik immediately. "We have only days," Rain said. Dravik's eyes narrowed. "Then we prepare. The queen's safety must be our first priority." The festival arrived quickly. The palace was decorated with glowing lanterns and colorful banners. Music filled the air. Nobles and citizens from across Velmara gathered in the great courtyard to celebrate. Queen Arian stood on a raised platform, greeting the crowd. Rain stood near the guards, his eyes scanning every face. He knew danger was close. Suddenly, a loud noise broke the music. A group of masked figures pushed through the crowd. They moved fast, weapons drawn. Rain reacted immediately. He charged forward, blocking one attacker's path. Dravik followed with the guards, moving to protect the queen. The battle was quick but fierce. The attackers fought with skill and desperation. Rain fought beside Dravik, their movements perfectly in sync. The crowd scattered, shouting in fear and surprise. Rain disarmed one attacker and threw him to the ground. Dravik faced another, his blade flashing in the moonlight. Together, they pushed back the threat. When the last attacker fled, the courtyard was quiet again. The queen was safe. But the danger was far from over. After the fight, Arian met with Rain and Dravik in her chambers. She looked tired but determined. "Who were those men?" she asked. Dravik shook his head. "Still unknown. But they follow the same symbol we found in the messages," Rain added. "They want to stop the alliance. They will not give up." The queen's eyes met theirs both. "Then we must be ready for whatever comes next." In the days that followed, Rain and Dravik worked even closer. They trained the guards harder and watched every visitor with suspicion. The palace felt like a fortress under siege. Rain learned more about Dravik. The commander was a man shaped by loss and honor. His hatred for humans had faded, but was replaced by a cautious respect. He was no longer just an enemy or a rival. He was an ally. One evening, Dravik spoke quietly while they watched the palace from the walls. "Your people have a strength I did not expect," Dravik said. "Not just in battle, but in heart." Rain looked at him. "We fight because we believe in more than war. We believe in hope." Dravik nodded slowly. "I see that now." The alliance between human and Velmari was no longer just political. It was personal. The danger still waited in the shadows, but Rain was ready for the first time. He felt that he belonged here. The palace was alive with quiet tension. The failed attack during the festival had shaken many. But the true threat was still hidden. Rain and Dravik knew this. The traitors were clever. Moving like shadows inside the royal court, Rain spent long hours reviewing the palace's security. He moved through corridors and chambers, searching for clues. He watched the nobles closely, learning their habits and alliances. The royal court was a maze of secrets. One afternoon, as Rain passed the great library, he noticed a small group of nobles gathered near a locked door. Their voices were low, but a few words caught his attention: alliance, weakness, earth. Rain paused and watched. The group seemed unaware of his presence. Their faces were hard and cold, their eyes full of distrust toward the queen's decisions. He knew this was the circle behind the conspiracy. That night, Rain met with Dravik in the commander's quarters. The room was simple, with weapons hanging on the walls and a map of Velmara spread across a wooden table. "We need proof," Dravik said. "The queen cannot act without solid evidence." Rain nodded. "I will find it." They planned carefully. Rain would observe the nobles closely during the next council meeting. Dravik would watch the palace guards and listen for any unusual orders. The day of the council arrived. The great hall was filled with the queen's advisors, generals, and nobles. The air was thick with formality and hidden words. Rain stood near the entrance, listening as the discussions began. Suddenly, one noble spoke. His voice was smooth but cold. "The alliance with Earth weakens Velmara," he said. "We risk losing our strength and traditions." Others nodded silently. The queen's face did not change. She listened. Rain's eyes searched the room. He saw subtle glances between certain nobles. They shared a secret. During the break, Rain quietly followed one of the nobles to a hidden chamber behind the hall. He waited in the shadows as the noble opened the door and entered. Minutes later, more nobles arrived, their voices low but urgent. Rain could not hear everything, but he caught enough to know the plan was growing. After they left, Rain entered the chamber. On a small table lay a device, one unfamiliar to him. It was small, but powerful. A signal jammer designed to block communication within the palace. Rain took the device and hid it carefully. He returned to Dravik, who looked grave. "This proves they plan to cut the queen off from her allies," Dravik said. Rain agreed. "We must act soon." That evening, they brought the evidence to Queen Arian. She studied the device carefully. "This confirms my fears," she said. "Some seek to isolate me and claim power for themselves." Rain spoke. "We can catch them if we set a trap." The queen nodded. "Do it." They prepared quickly. The palace guards were alerted to watch closely. Some guards were given secret orders to appear loyal, but report any suspicious activity. The trap was set. Days passed with no movement. The tension grew heavier. Then, one night, Rain heard soft footsteps near the queen's chambers. He moved silently to the corridor and saw a figure slipping through the shadows. Rain stepped forward and blocked the way. The figure froze. It was one of the queen's trusted servants. The servant tried to speak, but Rain held up his hand. "Who sent you?" Rain asked. The servant looked down, defeated. "I was paid," he said quietly. "I did not want to hurt the queen, but I had no choice." Rain did not answer. He knew the servant was only a small part of a larger plan. The next day, the queen held a council meeting. This time, she spoke firmly. "I know of the traitors," she said. "They will not succeed." Some nobles looked away. Others clenched their fists. Rain stood beside the queen, feeling a deep pride. He had come from Earth, far from home, to stand with this people. The fight was not over, but the path was clear. Together, they would protect Velmara's future. The palace was filled with a new energy. The queen's warning had shaken the court. Nobles who had whispered in secret now spoke with care. The threat had been exposed, and the people knew the cost of betrayal. Rain stood near the queen's side in the great hall. Today, a special ceremony was held. The queen wanted to honor those who stood for Velmara's future, and Rain was among them. Dravik stood beside him, his dark eyes steady and calm. The commander no longer seemed a rival, but a trusted companion. Their duel had started as a challenge, but it had become the beginning of an alliance. Queen Arian spoke to the gathered crowd. This day marks a new chapter for Velmara, she said. We have faced threats, both from outside and within, but we have stood strong. Her voice carried through the hall. Among us stands a man from another world. He came not to conquer, but to protect. He faced our greatest warrior and earned respect by his courage and honor. Rain felt the eyes of the court on him. He stood tall and silent, knowing words. We're not needed, the queen continued. Let this be a symbol to all strength is found not in fear or hatred, but in unity and trust. After the ceremony, Rain walked through the palace gardens. The air was fresh and the sky clear. He thought about the journey he had taken from a soldier on Earth to a protector of an alien queen. Dravik joined him, breaking the quiet. You fought well, Rain. Your honor has changed many minds. Rain smiled slightly. I only did what I had to, for peace, for trust. Dravik nodded. There will be more challenges. But now, you are one of us. Rain looked at the twin moons shining above. I hope to earn that title every day. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding trust. Rain helped train new guards, blending Earth's tactics with Velmari tradition. The alliance between the two worlds grew stronger, and with it, the hope for a peaceful future. Queen Arian often sought Rain's advice. He found himself not just a soldier, but a counselor and friend. One evening, as the palace lights dimmed, the queen approached Rain. Your journey is far from over, she said, but you have proven yourself worthy. Rain bowed. I will serve Velmara as long as I am able. The queen smiled. Then we will face whatever comes together. In that moment, Rain understood. This was no longer a story of war or duel. It was a story of unity of different worlds coming together to build a future. The commander of the royal guard had challenged him, but through courage and honor, Rain had earned a place not just in the court, but in the heart of Velmara.